Well, I'm approaching this as a visual investigation, as I said at first, and I hope to reveal some hidden psychological elements of this. The main thing is just saying, not in a negative way, but that people have been discussing this issue for 20 years. March 18th, 2010 will be the 20th anniversary, and for 20 years now, everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has a lead. This hundreds of suspects, hundreds of investigators, hundreds of treasure hunters, and documentaries discussing the crime, and books discussing the caper, books without an ending, as Billy Youngworth likes to say. They keep writing books, but there's going to be no ending until there's a recovery. And obviously no one can make the motion picture film because there's not going to be an ending. And what's more boring than a film without an ending? Art doesn't have an ending. It's endless. So I mean, this painting will document visually the entire investigation and most of the most important characters and victims and suspects and investigators in it in a neutral way, but there's still that psychological element that people are discussing things and someone on that canvas is telling the right story. The problem is, are we listening or reading between the lines?
The Gardner art heist provokes a lot of raw emotion from people, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. Is that an attraction for you towards creating this work of art, the raw emotion?
Well, of course, raw emotion is always important for an artist because I feed off of it.
Next question. How do you as an artist approach painting a portrait?
Well, I had one of my first painting teachers was Joe Dawley, famous in New Jersey, locally, and in Florida. He was a realist who painted like Rembrandt, but then he got Parkinson's disease and painted and just started to paint like an impressionist because his hand started to shake. But he wouldn't stop painting until the day he died. So with a shaky hand, he started painting like, so I was turned on to at an early age, Sisley, Monet, Renoir, all of these artists, which eventually led me to Degas, Monet, but I neglected other artists. And coming from New Jersey, you don't necessarily get led to the bigger picture when you start with art history. Everyone starts with the Impressionists or Picasso or Vincent van Gogh. So, but eventually, in 1989, Joe Dawley retired for health reasons, and I got a Italian painter, Michele Donato, a great art teacher at us. I wasn't at School of Visual Arts yet. I was still at Ducre School of Art in Plainfield, and he taught a Renaissance technique, and he said, you have to paint like the Italians. You draw like an Italian, you have to paint like the Italians. So he started teaching me how they, in a simple way, not as complicated as like a Titian, Tiziano, or Giorgione painted. He said, start with a ground, maybe a burnt sienna, and put in lights and darks and bring that out. Then eventually when that dries, put in glazes. And he said a Titian would, for a year, paint a painting and put on 50 glazes, you know. So in a way, he taught me to do it in a quicker way with a couple glazes, but it looks nice. And not many people paint like that anymore, you know. And then I went to Italy and stayed there for 2 years. And I went to the Uffizi, and I went to Rome, and I went to all the galleries and the museums, and I saw art everywhere. And this is what's important about the Gardner Gossips concept, because I saw art everywhere. I saw Ribera in Napoli, and every person that walked the street. Italians are born pantomimes. Every movement, every gesture, they don't have to speak to get their point across. They use it with their body language, you know. So I saw the Renaissance everywhere, and I came back, and I was geared up to paint like this, you know. So not only did I learn to paint with the underpainting and the glazes, but and with the colors of the Renaissance and Titian especially, you know. Not only did I learn to do that, but I saw it firsthand, which was so important. And that interaction with the people. People are important. People are real important. They have stories to tell in their faces, not just in their words, but with their faces, with their gestures, with their past lives. And you unravel them like an artichoke, and the heart is soft and delicious in the middle. And you got to pull through tough little things. That's what people are like. That's what our gossips are, like tough little things. To get to that beautiful heart, you have to peel each little layer that protects it. Layer after layer after layer to get to the truth of things, you know. And it's very interesting, these complicated people, complicated minds. So when I went back to the States, I continued my studies at School of Visual Arts, and of course I was there introduced to the world of modern art, contemporary art, you know, from Jackson Pollock right through the year 2000. But I stuck to my guns and I kept painting like an Italian. I neglected the Dutch, and this is what is interesting. I neglected the Dutch, and I went and I saw so much Italian work in my life, which is my joy, my passion. But I neglected the Dutch. I knew it was there. When I'd go to the Met, I spent very limited time in looking at anything like a Rembrandt. The Gardner caper is what led me to the Dutch, and so now this whole Gardner concept has led me to not only the victims like Rembrandt. I see Rembrandt as the biggest victim. Vermeer is the victim because years after their death, they are still talking to us as the ancestors of art. They speak to us through their work. Their work resonates with me. Their work talks to me. They are telling us who they are and what they felt and what they want us to know about them and the world that they lived in through their work. And in a way, it's not old dusty stuff that's hanging on a wall as a lot of artists now in the contemporary world view it. This is not dusty old paintings that need to be guarded from thieves. This is living voices. They are living voices of past artists who are our ancestors in the art world. So I've been spending a lot of time in this dialogue with Rembrandt especially, and to another extent Frans Hals, the two of them, who my love of Rembrandt led me to Frans Hals. So I've been in the Met and the Frick looking at everything Rembrandt and Frans Hals did that is hanging in those museums. And now, which unfortunately I didn't get to go to the National Gallery of Portraits in London because I had to see so many friends, and which was joyful too, you know, spending time with the people. But now that I go to Amsterdam on Friday, I'm going to be in the museum every day for the next 20 days, and I will be looking at Rembrandt, having this open dialogue with the greatest victim of the art. Of course, Rembrandt, as you know, is on the canvas. Isabella's speaking to Rembrandt, Rembrandt's speaking to me. And Isabella's telling Rembrandt, look what's coming down the line. Someone's gonna nick you off the wall, mate. And Rembrandt's telling me, what are you gonna do about it? Well then, this is what I'm doing about it. I'm painting it in paint. What else can I do? The strongest thing I can do as an artist is paint my feelings in paint.
He's interacting on the canvas.
Well, basically, you just have to play with the facial expressions and, you know, obviously make them looking into each other's eyes and talking to each other, and you can feel and see the communication.
Mm-hmm. There are many victims of the Gardner art heist. Can you highlight your feelings towards these victims?
Like I said, I feel the biggest victims were Manet, Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas. These were the victims. Because that artwork, when an artist, he's putting his soul onto that canvas, you know, and then the artist is doing it for reasons not just monetary. It's something you have to do. You're putting your soul into that canvas, onto that canvas, and you know, it's society that turns it to the marketplace values and throws it to the devil with the auction houses and the marketplace values, you know. Like in Victor Hugo, Les Miserables, a soul for a piece of bread. Misery offers, society accepts. You know, what they're victimized, their beautiful artworks, like that beautiful seascape, you know, that Rembrandt's only seascape, or the concert of Vermeer. These are priceless, really. They're priceless to the United States of America. How many Vermeers or Rembrandts do we have? There's just not enough to go around, and then because it becomes worth $100 million, maybe the Vermeer's worth now, that they're gonna steal it off the wall. Which, let's face the facts, the thugs who did do the robbery actually pulled off the robbery, not the ones who planned it, but the ones who pulled it off don't care a rat's ass about art, or know two things about art, but they would have walked right past that and went for the safe, or, you know, or the jewels. But because society has you know, made this big marketplace value, it's worth $100 million, it's stolen off the wall, and so the artist, his soul is victimized, and his memory and his voice, the artistic voice, the voice that speaks to us beyond the grave. Because as long as we're looking at it and standing in front of it, and the artist is talking to us.
Right, now, As a police officer, how do you detach yourself and become a neutral observer?
Well, it's interesting because I don't hold it against an ex-con or an ex-thief or an ex-criminal for their past. I don't judge. On the job, my job's to arrest, not to convict or not to judge. Certainly not to judge. So if you respect me, I respect you. That was the law of the street. You respect me, I respect you. It's not that I'm going to judge you and say, you're a dirtbag, you steal, or not for nothing. It's not even. It's the thief's job to steal. It's my job to catch him as a police officer. So I mean, if you got caught, I don't have to disrespect you. You just did your job not very well. So now your job was not to get caught. So we don't have to disrespect each other, and that respect thing goes a long way with me. So I have no problem sitting down with an art thief or a notorious art thief or jewel thief and having dinner with them in New York City, or discuss trade talk. One thing I like that Billy Youngworth did say was, it's funny that he says, cops, robbers, same union, different local. I mean, we feed off each other, right? One's running and one's running after. And I mean, if there weren't thieves, I'd be out of work. So basically, I don't have a problem. And you learn a lot from that. I had my first 3 years, my first 4.5 years in corrections, 3 years of which was in the federal unit. And I knew some very big name criminals like Gaetano Badalamenti, Carlos Leder, and these were big names, and all 5 families of the New York Philly mob was in there, and this is just, respectful, good sense of humors. We're stuck in the joint together. And honestly, they respected me, I respected them. I learned more than anything there. You can't judge because these guys have instincts more than the average. The banker doesn't have instincts. The plumber doesn't have instincts. But you know what? Those criminals, the big time guys, have instincts, and they know if you're looking down. You could be smiling in their face, but the fact is, they know when you disrespect them, or you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm smiling in your face, but I think you're a dirtbag. They know, and then it's gonna get you nowhere as a police officer. It's gonna get me nowhere as an artist. So I learned a lot about the underworld just by being respectful and talking to people and sitting down. And I have no problem going to dinner with an art thief. And then you know what? I feed off of that because I learn. I'm like a sponge, soaking up knowledge. And how.